just for hate speech, for jokes.
And you're not allowed on late night TV either.
I don't get invited to...
Rob Schneider, one of the most famous comedians with his signature ridiculous and humorous style, once stirred up the screen with series like Deuce Bigalow or The Hot Chick. A famous comedy star gradually turned his back on Hollywood. What controversies, failures, and personal choices caused his career to decline? Let's explore Rob Schneider's ups and downs journey and find out if he can return to the spotlight. Childhood and early career. Rob Schneider was born on October 31, 1963, in San Francisco, California, into a multicultural family. His mother, Pilar Monroe, was a kindergarten teacher and school superintendent, while his father, Marvin Schneider, was a military veteran and worked in real estate. With mixed Filipino and European heritage, Schneider grew up in an environment that was both strict and loving. Schneider showed a strong passion for comedy from a young age. He was particularly influenced by comedy greats such as Richard Pryor, George Carlin, and the Monty Python comedy group. Their quirky, satirical humor shaped Schneider's later acting style. Before becoming a household name, Schneider began his career on the small stage. He regularly performed stand-up comedy at San Francisco comedy clubs, trying to make a name for himself in the local entertainment scene. One of the first places he performed was the Holy City Zoo, a famous comedy club that has been a launching pad for many other comedians. Thanks to his hard work and versatility, Schneider gradually gained attention. He not only wrote sharp stand-up comedy but also experimented with different acting styles. In 1987, Schneider won a talent search organized by HBO, which allowed him to appear on the 13th Annual Young Comedians Special, a special program hosted by comedian Dennis Miller. This was an important turning point, helping Schneider get the attention of filmmakers. In 1988, Rob Schneider received a golden opportunity when he was invited to participate in the famous comedy show Saturday Night Live, SNL. Initially, he only took on the role of scriptwriter and dialogue writer for comedy skits, but with his natural talent and charm on stage, Schneider quickly had the opportunity to appear in front of the camera. The early years at SNL were not easy, but Schneider made a strong impression with a series of humorous characters such as Richard Lehmer, a troublesome office worker who mocked his co-workers, Carlo, a quirky Italian restaurant worker, and the copy guy with the legendary catchphrase, "making copies." Thanks to his creativity and unique comedic style, he quickly became one of the pillars of SNL in the early 1990s, along with other famous comedians such as Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, and David Spade. His time at Saturday Night Live not only helped Schneider affirm his name, but also laid a solid foundation for his later film career. His success on SNL opened the door for many film roles, from light-hearted comedies to works that he wrote and produced himself. Rob Schneider was once one of Hollywood's most prominent comedians with a series of hit comedies. But can his absurd style of comedy last? Why did his career gradually decline after his heyday? Career peak. After leaving Saturday Night Live in 1994, Rob Schneider began a strong shift to the film industry. Thanks to his close relationship with Adam Sandler, a colleague at SNL, Schneider had many opportunities to appear in comedies that Sandler produced or starred in. The late 1990s and early 2000s saw Schneider explode in the comedy genre, especially films with simple plots but full of funny elements. This was the first film in which Schneider took on a leading role and also co-wrote the script. In the film, he played Deuce Bigalow, a fish tank cleaner who accidentally becomes a gigolo to pay off his debts. The absurd but humorous story quickly attracted the general audience, helping the film earn more than $92 million worldwide against a budget of only about $17 million. However, critics were not very enthusiastic about the film. They criticized Deuce Bigalow for being too vulgar, using sex comedy and silly situations instead of a deep story. Famous critic Roger Ebert even called it one of the worst comedies ever made. But despite the criticism, the film still had a loyal audience and became a comedy cult classic over time. This success paved the way for a sequel, Deuce Bigalow, European Gigolo, 2005. But this time, the box office and reviews were worse than the first. After the success of Deuce Bigalow, Schneider continued to star in The Animal. The film tells the story of Marvin Mange, a weak police officer who is seriously injured and is operated on with animal body parts. As a result, he has superhuman strength and instincts, but encounters funny situations. With a budget of $47 million, The Animal grossed nearly $85 million, becoming one of the most commercially successful comedies of its time. But once again, critics were not supportive of Schneider. The film was criticized for its illogical script, excessive use of silly comedy situations, and even dialogue that was considered racist. In The Hot Chick, Schneider plays a thief who accidentally switches bodies with a beautiful high school girl, played by Rachel McAdams. The film explores the irony of a grown man trapped in the body of a teenage girl. Despite its appealing concept, The Hot Chick received mixed reactions. Some audiences loved the film's light-hearted humor, but many critics criticized the film's one-sided and unsubtle exploitation of women. The film also faced controversy over its portrayal of transgender people and the gender bias in the script. Despite this, The Hot Chick still grossed over $54 million worldwide, further cementing Schneider's place in the commercial comedy world. Collaborating with Adam Sandler and finding success with Grown Ups, 2010. Since the late 2000s, Schneider's career has begun to slow down as his goofy comedy style has lost its appeal to audiences. However, thanks to his strong relationship with Adam Sandler, he has continued to appear in many of Sandler's films. One of Schneider's most successful projects during this period was Grown Ups, 2010. The film brought together a star-studded cast of comedy stars, including Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Chris Rock, David Spade, and Schneider. The story revolves around a group of high school friends who reunite after the death of their basketball coach. Despite its poor reviews, Grown Ups grossed over $271 million, becoming one of the highest-grossing comedies of 2010. Its financial success continued with a sequel, Grown Ups 2, 2013. But Schneider did not participate due to scheduling conflicts and personal issues. Although he was once one of the most prominent comedians in the 1990s and early 2000s, Schneider gradually lost his appeal to the public. His films were increasingly underrated. The content lacked innovation, and the way he portrayed his characters was too exaggerated, making the audience gradually feel bored. Moreover, as the audience's taste changed, they began to prefer comedies with more depth and satire, instead of works that simply relied on silliness and absurdity. This caused Schneider's career to gradually decline, forcing him to seek new directions. Controversy and a declining career. Despite his commercial success with several comedies, Rob Schneider never really received critical acclaim. The climax of criticism came with the film Deuce Bigalow, European Gigolo, 2005, a sequel to the 1999 hit. Not only was the film panned, but it was also considered one of the worst comedies ever made. The famous critic Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times did not hesitate to call the film a complete waste of time and gave it 0 stars, a rarity in his career. When another journalist criticized the film, Schneider responded harshly and publicly ridiculed that person in the media. However, this response did nothing but alienate Schneider further from the film community. Roger Ebert then fired back strongly. Has Rob Schneider ever made an Oscar-winning movie? Oh, yes. He did have a supporting role in Judge Dredd, 1995, a film that was criticized equally. This line quickly became one of the most memorable repartee in the history of film criticism. Although Rob Schneider had a loyal fan base thanks to his signature comedy style, his reputation was gradually declining due to the frequent release of poor-quality films. Once a familiar face in the American comedy industry, by the mid-2010s, Rob Schneider was gradually turned away from Hollywood. The reasons could be listed as being stereotyped as a ridiculous comedy role. Despite his acting ability, Rob Schneider almost only received roles with exaggerated, shallow comedy. This made directors and producers no longer interested in working with him on big projects. Adam Sandler's career declined after leaving the group. Adam Sandler was the one who helped Schneider a lot in the early stages of his career. However, when the films of this group of comedians were no longer as successful as before, Schneider also lost an important resource that helped him maintain his reputation. No longer favored by major studios, when his style of comedy was no longer attractive, major studios such as Sony and Warner Brothers gradually removed Schneider from the priority list. With the desire to maintain his career, Schneider began to produce and direct his films. But most of these projects failed both in terms of revenue and expertise. The films he directed did not leave an impression, and even caused his reputation to continue to decline. When his acting career was no longer the same, Rob Schneider tried his hand in many other fields, but did not achieve significant achievements. Director and screenwriter, Schneider directed several small comedies, but these works did not receive the attention of the audience and were often criticized for the quality of the script. He did some voice acting for animated films and video games, but none of the projects stood out or helped him regain his reputation. Nothing helped Schneider resurrect his career, and he gradually became a lesser-known name in the entertainment industry. Not only facing a decline in his career, Rob Schneider also seriously affected his image with controversial statements. Opposing COVID-19 vaccines. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Schneider publicly expressed his views against vaccines, even spreading a lot of misinformation. This caused him to be heavily criticized by the medical community as well as many fans, publicly supporting Donald Trump. While many Hollywood actors tend to support progressive politicians, Schneider went against the flow when he publicly declared his support for former President Donald Trump. This led to him being turned away by a large number of colleagues and almost banned from many entertainment industry events. Criticizing Hollywood, Schneider once stated that Hollywood has a cancel culture and is following the wrong political path. His statements have made him increasingly isolated in the film industry. With a series of controversies and a declining career, Rob Schneider has gone from an A-list comedy star to a forgotten name in the American entertainment industry. Rob Schneider has gone through 3 marriages with many ups and downs in his personal life. Why did his eldest daughter, Elle King, decide not to use the name Schneider? How did the relationship between father and daughter break down, and can they ever be mended? Marriage and family. Rob Schneider went through 3 marriages before finding stability in his personal life with his current wife, Patricia Azarkoya Schneider. His first marriage was to London King, a model and actress, in 1988. At that time, Schneider was still struggling with her comedy career, while London King had not yet made much of her mark in the entertainment industry. A year later, they welcomed their first daughter, Elle King, whose birth name was Tana Ella Schneider. However, the marriage did not last long, and the couple divorced in 1990. After the split, London King took custody of the child, and Schneider was largely absent from Elle's childhood. Her parents' early divorce meant that Ella had little opportunity to be close to her biological father, and she spent most of her time living with her mother and stepfather Justin Taser. After divorcing London King, Schneider continued to focus on his acting career and entered a second marriage. However, the identity of his second wife was not widely disclosed to the media, and this marriage also ended quickly without children. Schneider rarely mentioned this period of his life, and information about his second marriage is still a mystery to the public. It was not until 2011 that Schneider found a happy home with his third wife, Patricia Azarcoya Schneider. Patricia is a Mexican television producer, 25 years younger than Schneider. The two met when Patricia worked for a television show in Mexico, and their relationship quickly developed. Despite the age and cultural differences, the two overcame the barriers and got married in 2011. After getting married, Schneider began to spend more time with his family, and his career gradually changed. The couple now has two daughters, Miranda Scarlett Schneider, born in 2012, and Madeline Robbie Schneider, born in 2016. Schneider often shares happy moments with his wife and children on social media, showing the image of a devoted father and a loving husband. Not only is Patricia Schneider's life partner, but she is also Schneider's partner in many artistic projects. She plays an important role in the sitcom Real Rob, a comedy television series produced, directed and starred by Schneider himself. The autobiographical film depicts Schneider's daily life with his wife and children, providing a humorous but realistic look at his family. Despite their current happy family life, Schneider and her eldest daughter, Ella King, have had a rocky relationship in the past. After her parents divorced, Elle lived primarily with her mother and stepfather, who had a big influence on her development. Her stepfather, Justin Tisa, was the one who guided Ella in pursuing music and exposed her to many genres of rock and blues from a young age. Due to the lack of connection with her biological father, Ella King decided to not use the Schneider surname, but her mother's when she began her singing career. She once openly shared in an interview that she wanted to make a name for herself without being labeled as Rob Schneider's daughter. Despite being estranged for many years, the relationship between father and daughter has shown signs of improvement recently. Schneider has begun to publicly support his daughter's career, frequently mentioning her in social media posts and attending her performances. Elle, on the other hand, has also been more open about her father, admitting that despite their differences, she still respects him. Elle King has now become a famous singer. Although they do not have a typical father-daughter relationship, Schneider and Elle are working to mend the cracks of the past. In a recent interview, Ella admitted that while her father is not perfect, he is still an important part of her life. The two are still on the journey of rebuilding their relationship, and although they are not as close as other families, they still have a certain respect and care for each other. Despite a period of earning millions from hit comedies, Rob Schneider was not immune to financial difficulties in later years, financial problems, and decline. Although once one of Hollywood's most prominent comedians, Rob Schneider was unable to maintain long-term financial success. After his peak with commercial comedies such as Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo 1999, The Animal 2001, and The Hot Chick 2002, Schneider gradually lost his appeal to audiences. His career began to slow down as his over-the-top comedy style, sensitive jokes and content that were criticized as being of poor quality fell out of favor. As a result, the big film projects that Schneider had participated in gradually disappeared, causing his income to drop significantly. Realizing that he was no longer being sought after by major studios, Schneider decided to start his own production company in the hope of creating films with his stamp and having more creative control. However, this ambition was quickly met with heavy failure. In 2010, Schneider invested in and starred in The Chosen One, a spiritual comedy that he directed and produced. The film was low budget, not heavily promoted, and received many negative reviews from critics, leading to disastrous revenue. This project not only failed to bring in profits, but also caused Schneider significant financial losses. Undaunted, in 2015, he continued to make the Real Rob series, a semi-autobiographical comedy series released on Netflix, telling the story of Schneider's personal life with humorous situations. Despite being a passionate project, Real Rob did not achieve the expected success. Many viewers thought the show was too complacent. The script was bland and lacked its signature humor. After only 2 seasons, Real Rob was discontinued by Netflix, putting Schneider in an even more difficult situation. The consecutive failures in self-producing films caused Schneider not only to lose money, but also to be further shunned by Hollywood. The fact that major studios no longer invited him to play the main role, combined with investments that could not be recovered, caused Schneider's finances to plummet. When his income from acting was no longer stable, Schneider was forced to change his lifestyle and find ways to maintain his finances. He used to own many expensive properties, including a luxury villa in Encino, Los Angeles. However, due to financial difficulties, Schneider had to sell this villa in 2020 for about $3.6 million USD. In addition, Schneider also had to reduce personal expenses. There was a time when he owned expensive cars and lived lavishly, but later, Schneider had to live more frugally and only take on small projects to earn an income to cover his living expenses. In addition to financial difficulties, Schneider also had health problems. When he was young, he was famous for his energetic acting style, often performing action scenes or over-the-top expressions to create laughter. However, age and the pressures of his career have affected his physical health. In recent years, Schneider rarely appeared in big projects, instead, only participating in nostalgic TV shows or performing stand-up comedy at small clubs. From a familiar comedian to the audience, Rob Schneider now only appears sporadically in small projects, no longer playing the main role in big movies. He has gradually been forgotten in the modern entertainment industry, where audience tastes have changed and no longer favor his comedy style. Can Rob Schneider regain his former glory, or will this be the end of his career? That question remains open. But looking at the current reality, it seems that Schneider's path back to the top is extremely difficult. Present and future. No longer receiving invitations from major studios, Schneider began to focus on independent film projects, where he could have more control over the content and acting style. One of the recent films he participated in was Daddy-Daughter Trip 2022, a work that he produced, directed, and starred in. The film is about a father who takes his daughter on a trip but gets caught up in a series of ironic situations. Despite Schneider's great efforts, Daddy-Daughter Trip did not make a big splash and only received average responses from the audience. In addition, Schneider also appeared in several low-budget films, but most of them did not make a significant impression. These projects were mainly released on streaming platforms instead of in theaters, clearly showing the decline in the actor's appeal. In addition to acting, Schneider also focuses on stand-up comedy, a field that he has been involved in since the early days of his career. Over the years, he has toured small theaters across the United States, bringing audiences humorous stories about life, family, and the entertainment industry. Although he still has a loyal fan base, Schneider's shows are no longer as attractive as before. Competition from young comedians with new styles and content close to modern audiences has made it difficult for Schneider to attract viewers. In addition, some of his controversial statements about politics and society have also turned many audiences away, reducing his reputation in the stand-up comedy world. Although he continues to work in the arts, it is clear that Rob Schneider is no longer a familiar name appearing in box office blockbusters or major television shows. He is no longer sought after by top directors, nor does he play an important role in major films like before. Instead, Schneider has to produce and participate in small projects himself to maintain his career. However, It is worth noting that he continues to be creative and has not given up his passion for acting. Although he is no longer at the peak of his fame, Schneider still persistently pursues art in his way. At the age of over 60, Rob Schneider may find it difficult to regain the glory of his peak. With the constant change in the entertainment industry, where new trends are constantly emerging, it is not easy for a comedian who has passed his prime like Schneider to return to the ranks of stars. However, with his extensive experience and inherent comedic talent, Schneider can still find a place in smaller fields, such as stand-up comedy or self-produced film projects. Can he create a new push in his career, or will he forever stand on the sidelines of Hollywood?